It's Saturday, and welcome to another episode of PO Cubed, your chronological guide to Nintendo's handheld consoles. My name's DD Ash, and this week we're playing Final Reverse, World Ice Hockey, CaveNoire, Chacha-maru Panic, and Little Master Raikuban no Densetsu. Let's start the show. Final Reverse DMG-FIJ, developed by Shoei System and published by Toei Animation. So, you've just played R-Type after reading the earlier review. You're beaten down, beaten up, and feeling really sorry for yourself. When this happens to us, the best way to regain your pride is, of course, to take it out on someone less powerful than you. In that case, give Final Reverse a go. This game feels like something that would have come out in the early 80s, the sort of thing where the entire premise of the game is two players shooting at each other from their own halves of the screen. If you remember Volleyfire, you'll have a kind of idea what I'm talking about. Final Reverse is basically the same thing, with a few different features. You can play horizontally or vertically, and can move within your zone in 4 directions. As you do so, however, a track is created behind you that your movements are limited to. You can plot a track from one side of your playfield to the other, and as long as you don't trap your route in, you can make it as long as you want. Each battle is 2 rounds. You first plot the route in the preliminary round, not my spelling mistake, and then for the final round the 2 routes are switched, hence the final reverse, I suppose, so that you get the track your opponent drew, and vice versa. I tend to find that sticking to a line parallel to the intersection is best, as the bullets only ever come perpendicular to it, meaning you'll only ever really have to move from side to side. Moving across the middle part is a mirror which, if either ship shoots it, rebounds the bullet back where they came from. The AI is pretty dumb, even at the highest difficulty, and will just pepper you with aimless shots, many of which will fly back at itself. It's not a one-shot affair, you have an energy meter, but even so, the computer sure does make your job easier for you. As well as the mirror, there will be this thing occasionally that looks like a missile silo. It'll fire these 2 orbs out in opposite directions. Destroying these will offer up power-ups to whoever's side of the screen they're on. There are several power-ups to collect, including double shots, bombs, invincibility, and something that you can shoot towards your enemy's tracks to block it. Once collected, you can select these using the B button. The game has several modes, the main of which being a 5-on-5 elimination match. Scroll mode is the same thing, but with a wider screen. The final option is a single battle, rather than the 5-battle tournament. Choose 5 from 9 different ships. The choice is visual only, and the order they'll fight in. You then have one-on-one fights over the 2 rounds, until one team is totally gone. What's silly is the surviving ship's health is totally replenished after each fight, meaning you can easily go the entire 5 matches without losing a ship. And that's the main problem with the game, really. It's too easy, meaning there's very little substance or challenge. Honestly, hide in a corner, put the game down, and it'll beat itself. The strength, as with most games like this, lies in playing against another person, and there's a link cable option to do just that. Otherwise, you're playing against some pretty stupid AI that isn't really a challenge. You'll soon be whining the championship. That's also not my spelling mistake, just so you know. World Ice Hockey DMG-WHA, developed and published by Athena. Athena weren't renowned for much, let's be honest. They did a bunch of mahjong games, as well as a lot of 10-pin bowling titles, including the underwhelming World Bowling for Game Boy. I suppose this is the next in the World Sports series, although it would be the final entry. World Ice Hockey is far more playable than the aforementioned Skittles simulator, thankfully. You select one of 8 nations with the goal of beating them all to win the cup. Before each game, you can call a meeting, where you can select various tactics for offense, defense, and several other options. It goes into quite a bit of detail, whether as window dressing or as an actual gameplay mechanic, I'm not sure. I don't really notice any change in-game, but then sports tactics are not my forte. There are 3 periods of 20 minutes each. Really, there are around 5 minutes real-time, and you don't change ends, you're always shooting to the top of the screen. You pass with B, shooting and tackling with A. You can hold the buttons for a little extra power. Passing is pretty accurate, the puck going roughly in the direction of the nearest teammate, but note that you also have to press B to receive the puck, otherwise it'll pass you straight by. Aiming your shots is more about your placement than the direction you're pressing. Left and right will shoot at a 45-degree angle, so it's more important to make your goal approach in a direct manner. You can tackle, or straight up trip opposing players with A. The game rarely calls an FAUL, as you seem to be able to get away with pretty much anything. If you do happen to fall, however, the ref skates onto the rink and drags you off like a scolded dog. The game moves at what feels like around 75% speed. This is fine, any faster and the blur would have been unmanageable. You can move the puck around your team really fluidly, and the pace to the game is good despite the slowed down aspect of it. When you're on the defensive, you can press B to take control of the nearest player, in the way that, say, FIFA does so well. The music is fast-paced and energetic, although it comes at the expense of any kind of sound effects, which is something of a shame. Graphically, the game shines, especially the scoreboard animations when you manage to score. In tournament mode, the difficulty spikes quite drastically. The first team is a piece of cake to beat, but then the second team definitely brings you back down to earth. All in all, World Ice Hockey is a delight. Sleek, stylish, and oh so playable. Infuriating and entertaining in equal measure. It's a wonder why Athena didn't do more of this sort of thing, as they were obviously pretty good at it. CaveNoire DMG-KNJ, developed and published by Konami. Let me first caveat this review by saying that I'm writing it based on an English fan translation. CaveNoire, or Black Wine Cellar in French, is a Japanese-exclusive, procedurally-generated dungeon crawler with certain roguelike elements, stripped back to its fundamentals. The qualifying characteristics are all there, randomly generated dungeons and characters moving in a turn-based fashion. This was fast becoming a popular niche, with great titles such as NetHack, Ragnarok, and the Sega duo Dragon Crystal on the Master System, and its bigger brother Fatal Labyrinth on the Mega Drive. However, I challenge you to think of another one on the Game Boy. That's right, there isn't one. Azure Dreams on the Game Boy Color was maybe about as close as it got other than CaveNoire. Where these types of games usually offer permadeath as a feature, where you restart a newly spawned game if you die, and a massive, long dungeon slog from start to finish, CaveNoire is a little gentler on you. The game is split into 4 separate dungeons, each with their own increasingly challenging quests. You can switch between dungeons as you please, and there's no discernible advantage to completing one over another. The quests usually involve killing a certain number of monsters, collecting a certain number of coins or orbs, or freeing a particular number of caged fairies. After you accomplish the quest goal, a door will open somewhere in the dungeon. It may be worth your time to delve a little deeper though, as there's no leveling up system, and your strengths and health can only be increased by finding power-ups in chests. Due to the difficulty increasing above your stats usually, it's also worth strategizing in such a way that you save any potions or spells until the harder parts, and maybe go try to find some after a dungeon has been cleared out. Die on a quest, and you don't need to restart the entire dungeon, just the quest you were last on. In a way, the lack of permadeath feels a little odd for a game like this. Imagine if in The Binding of Isaac you could just restart at the beginning of each floor, there'd be no challenge left. However, that's not to say that CaveNoire is an easy game, because it really isn't. You absolutely need to concentrate on every little move you make, as false steps are often punished, and over-aggressiveness leads you to doom more often than not. Unless you need to clear a dungeon of monsters, It's usually best to calculate your steps so as to avoid them, if you can, as there are no experience points and very few item drops to be had. Of course, you can't always dodge everything. Some floors are not expansive and consist of a mere footbridge, leaving you with not much choice but to strike out at the numerous ghosts, snakes, dragons and such. You're not completely useless though. At the start of each level, the magical Kirby tree fills 4 of your 8 inventory slots with some tools for you. There's usually a potion or antidote, as well as a cloak that hides you for a short while, and some aggressive magic like a fireball that kills pretty much anything forthwith. Like I say, preserve these unless you're desperate, as pickups are rare. Items really aren't as prominent a feature as other games in this style, such as Dragon Crystal, where you use spells and scrolls more than your sword. But even so, you can find yourself scrabbling through your meager inventory looking for something to help you out. Each quest takes no more than a few minutes, and with a battery backup and unlimited attempts, death isn't really that much of a frustration. This can lead you to being a little more cavalier in your playstyle, but it's not really conducive to success. The randomly generated nature of the game means you rely on luck of the draw a good deal. Sometimes you can cruise through levels unopposed, whereas other times a supremely powerful monster can spawn right next to you. Occasionally you'll descend some stairs into a room that appears to have no exit. If this happens, just walk up to the walls until a secret passage opens up. They do exist, but not in such a way that makes you need to look at all the walls. The location of them is virtually always implied, and they never hide any treasure. Musically and graphically, the game is fantastic. Each dungeon has its own theme song, and the sound effects really suit the combat sequences. The game looks brilliant for what it is, with fog of war in places and comical but still quite sinister looking enemies. The whole experience is quite delightful and, in retrospect, probably still playable without being able to read Japanese, as there's not much of a story anyway, and once you learn what the use items are, then it'll become second nature. Chacha-maru Panic, DMG-CCJ, developed and published by Human Entertainment. An utterly bizarre action game here. You play as the chubby little Chacha-maru who has to slide around these ice platforms, knocking great slabs of something into the water without falling off the platform yourself. I can't tell you why you're doing this, you just are, okay? As you'd expect, the movement is incredibly slippery, but in quite a satisfying way. Momentum is reserved nicely, and once you get used to it, you've got decent control over your speed and direction. You just need to knock the grey blocks off the edge. You can ignore the black ones. Occasionally there will be other chaps in there with you, sentient boulders that trundle back and forth getting in your way. They don't target you as such, but you can rebound off of them and fly into the water. There might be birds that perch on a block every now and then. If you can knock a block off when it has a visitor, you get more points. Sometimes this boulder with a face will come out. If you can smash it hard enough, the entire level starts quaking and all the blocks fall into the sea, insta-winning the stage. The face buttons don't do anything. Well, A makes your character stick their fat gut out, but it doesn't seem to do anything. Maybe it was meant to increase the rebound amount, who knows. Every 10 stages there is a kind of boss. Now you're not pushing blocks into the water, you have to slam into the boss with enough speed a number of times until it dies. Bear in mind, these pose much more of a threat than any other enemy you've seen up to this point, as they actively fire at you. After each boss stage you get a mini-game where you have to stop a rapidly fluctuating distance counter, and you get propelled along a flat course while some guy sweeps in front of you, curling style. In later levels this guy reappears, sweeping across some of the courses and reducing its slipperiness. This is going to be a short review, as I've literally summed up the entire game already. It's not bad, it's not great. Chacha-maru Panic is pretty good. It's also pretty mad. Little Master Raikuban no Densetsu DMG-LAJ, developed by Zeno Works and published by Takuma Shoten. This was slated to be released in the US by ASCII Entertainment, who allegedly were going to call it Doomsayer: A Hero's Crusade, which is a much more epic title than Little Master Legend of Raikuban. This spelled the first in a mini-series of Little Master games. The Game Boy had a sequel in 1992, and there was a third on the Super Nintendo in 1995. Half a year before the events of the first game, the evil demon king Gezagane mysteriously started taking over the world, kingdom by kingdom. Now your king comes to you seeking help, with the enemy on your own doorstep. You play Liam, who, along with his band of fierce warriors that include a minotaur named Momo and a sheep called Wool Boy, must defeat the siege and protect your land. Click on a member of your troops to see their movement range. If you get close enough to a foe, you can choose to attack them, and they will retaliate in kind. There's a definite Fire Emblem or Shining Force feel to this game, whereby you can move and then perform an action for each of your characters per turn, then play switches to the opposing side. The ground your character and the enemy rest on has an effect too, with some tiles providing a greater defense boost and so on. The background designs for the fight sequences are faint, but if you look closely you'll see they're actually really well detailed, and the character sprites and animations are quite adorable. The game progresses through each level, or scene, and the aim typically is to defeat all the enemies. At any stage on your turn, you can check out your troops and get a full report on their health, attack and defense stats, how far they can move per turn, amongst other things, which really opens the game up into strategizing your plans. You can also see how much EXP they've earned. Bear in mind that the character that strikes the killing blow on an enemy will get much more experience, so decide whether you're going to evenly level your squad by letting weaker troops finish off enemies. Characters are of several different classes. There are land-based ones, represented by a human. Some can travel on water, and some can fly. The stats balance out. Those more movement limited are probably going to be stronger in other ways. The land provides several obstacles. Trees provide more cover, meaning your defense will go up, at the cost of a slight movement range. Unless your characters can fly, rivers can only be crossed by bridges. Hills will reduce your movement range, and some mountains cannot be passed at all. Keep an eye out for special tiles on the landscape. A 6-pointed star will fully heal a character if they step on it. You really want to seek out the buildings. Quite often you'll rescue other characters who'll then join up with you, bolstering your forces. Other times you'll get a piece of information about the level you're on, advising you to do a certain thing or go to a certain place. One such instance is where a townsperson tells you to take a detour to a temple in the south. You can combine 2 of your troops together if you move them both onto this tile at the same time. Not all combos work. You cannot fuse anything with your main character or the Minotaur, but everything else should work. Do so, and you can either create a stronger version of one of the characters you fused, the other one being sacrificed, or you'll create a much stronger level 1 character. Why should you do this, you ask? If you found the mouse on level 1, you'll appreciate that some starting characters are quite pathetic, and it's only right they should give their puny little lives for the greater good. Plus, no character can get higher than level 8, so before too long, they'll already be as strong as they're ever going to be. Don't be afraid to merge characters together. There's no permadeath. If a character faints in battle, they just run away. You'll get them back on the next stage. You can revisit any completed scenario as well if you want to level up a bit more, which maybe makes the game too easy, but then it's up to you whether you do this or not. Following the game's story path, you get story cutscenes between every level, by the way, leads to a very satisfying difficulty curve that'll start easy but really test your mettle as time goes on. There's so much more I could say about this game, just trust me and play it. This is the first example of a strategy game on the Game Boy that really executes the formula well. If there was a single game I would implore you to download the fan translation of and play from start to finish, it would probably be Little Master. Absolutely outstanding. Thanks for listening to the Portable Power Podcast. If you want to support the show, the best way to do so is on Patreon at patreon.com/Portable Power Podcast. Or subscribe on the YouTubes. We have daily uploads Monday to Friday, where you can watch me suck at the games as I talk about them. You can tweet me at POCubed or on any of the other socials you might expect. Thanks again and have a great weekend.